Tobe, have we figured this out yet? I
I
feel
think,
like
yeah.
I feel like I'm having growing pains with all this technology. I preferred when I propped up my cell phone in my shoe on a stack of books
Yeah.
and I just talked at my phone.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I'm looking at the YouTube channel right now, and I'm sure Brett is watching it too. I don't see that it's popping up yet on the live broadcast, so let's just get some confirmation that it's actually live on YouTube, because right now I don't have it. Maybe there's a delay, but I see that it is live here. So we'll just wait for Brett to give us the yay or nay. There's no audience populating in the comment section yet either, which I do see that the comment there we go. I'm the only one here. Okay. Brett,
How
check and
come I don't see this?
make sure that it's connected right now to the YouTube channel, because I don't see that it is. Oh, there we go. We're getting people in. Aloha, Nancy's here. So apparently it is showing places.
Everywhere
Okay,
but
here we
on
go.
my
And you don't see it.
no.
Hmm.
Oh, there. Okay, now I do.
Now you
Haha.
got it? Okay, cool.
Yeah, now I've got the restream, the help desk, like I am going to walk through and teach you everything. Now I gotta get okay, thank you for your commitment to customer service. Good day. Sorry. I appreciate what they do. It's a hard job. Um, we'll just take a few minutes and let people catch their breath and join us. We have a lot to cover tonight. We've got a lot. And Renee Drew, thank you so much. Here we go. That is right. Right out of the gate. Thank you for your support. And oh, I'm seeing Brett. Did you say Doug Morrison is here? Aha. Doug, check it out.
Is Doug responsible for that beautiful thing?
So yeah, he was telling us at Beachfoot how he's been making these, and we were just like, we need this. So this is what he made for us.
That's gorgeous. It's like an orb. Uh, did you think of that design in the beginning as far as it being an orb, or was it just to highlight the Sasquatch?
Are you getting an echo when I talk? Because I can hear it and it's driving me nuts.
Oh, really?
Um,
No, I'm not getting it.
okay, I'll just talk really loud and fast and just disregard everything. No, I think Brett worked with a designer to come up with it, and it just he designed it. And then what Doug was doing was circular, so it just seemed like a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, let me
Chris,
know if.
thank you.
Yeah, well, now where's Chris located out of?
Chris is down in Arizona.
Oh, Chris.
Chris.
Chris. I didn't know he was a artist.
Chris.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, okay, it sounds like okay, everyone's kind of showing up. So where should we even begin? Should we just kind of run over the agenda of things to talk about, or should we just dive in and get into it?
Oh yeah, I think we should totally just dive in.
Okay. And hey, Brett, can you check the chat and see if Barb is here? And if not, can you shoot her a message to let her know that she's going to be the topic of discussion for a good part of the night? In a good way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, right out of the gate, something that was supposed to be talked about last week, and I almost started to say something, and then we went in another direction. There's been a lively discussion in the community section of the YouTube channel about rock throwing. So,
Let's get
Tobe,
into it.
let's get into it
Let's get it.
now.
That needs to be our new. That's our new tagline. Let's get into it. Um,
Okay. So
All the gossip, all the kids are talking about this. Ozempic and rock throwing. It's on the tip of everyone's tongue. Which has the worst consequences in the next 5 years? All right, go ahead. All right, rock throwing it is.
okay,
We'll stick
so let's
with
talk
that
about
one.
and the main point that's coming up is it aggression? Is it playful? I think just like the the conversation. Are
Right.
you okay?
I'm okay. Go ahead.
Uh,
We have fun here. I can talk.
we do.
Okay,
Okay, no, I can do this. I swear.
let's get into it. Rock throwing. You start. Oh my goodness.
You guys, it's been a really long day.
Yes.
And I'll tell you this. I look forward to Thursdays because it's like we can we can just like kind of be loose. We go nonstop
Right.
so hard, like every
Right.
every day, like
This is
doing
basically our
doing
Saturday.
documentary stuff. So it's kind of nice just to kind of cut loose and have some fun. But
Right.
no, in all seriousness, like there's people are wondering, like, is this aggression? Is it playfulness and stuff? And just like you can run into Sasquatch with different temperaments. Some are going to
Yeah.
be friendly, some are going to be curious, some are going to be playful. I think territory. It could be a territorial thing. I know. You don't hear too many reports of people actually getting hit by the rocks, though. It really seems like
Hmm.
they have a good aim, and it's almost like a warning that they're throwing. I know Sonia Zohar talks about when she had a rock hurled right past her head, and she's kind of like, "Okay, you guys, noted, knock it off." But was never hit. But it did seem like a territorial warning sign. And then you hear the stories about kids, kids in the forest, getting having like acorns and pine cones thrown at them.
Yeah. Well, so rock throwing is something that you kind of have to be a part of to believe as far as the accuracy. And you're right. A lot of times people talk about um, how the rock throwing is a warning of sorts, and it's kind of the beginning stages of activity. I could go after story. One that comes to mind, I believe, was a Bigfooter near Bellingham, Washington, near Mount Baker, a guy by the name of Mark Blankenship, I believe. He's a military vet, and he had a really successful YouTube channel before you guys came on the scene. I think his health took a toll on him for whatever reason. He's not on YouTube, but there was an amazing video of him with a GoPro out underneath Mount Baker with a group of guys, and they got too close. They crossed a creek bed in a known hotspot, and as soon as they jump across this creek bed, the rocks start coming, and the accuracy of the footage. First of all, that I've never you don't really see video footage of rock throwing. This one absolutely showed it, and there was some distinct accuracy of these rocks hitting the backpacks of these guys, pretty hard too. But there's cushioning in the back form there where their camelbacks are and their backpacks. And so as one guy's walking along, another guy's in front of him, and you see a rock coming at the guy's backpack, and then another rock in the hitting the guy in front of him at his backpack. So that's just a small example. But now let's go to like the human aspect, right? Like if we go to South America in the Amazon, there's some footage people can Google of some of the natives there taking just rocks in a sling, or I think just rocks in a sling, and they can hit like a little pit viper at over 50 yards away between the eyes. I mean, this is what's capable, right? You go to things that happen with us where a rock seemingly was thrown so hard and so fast at a rabbit that it penetrated the skull. So this is just a small little rock. It's very difficult to get something small to penetrate something hard. It has to be going at a tremendous velocity. But yet, those are animals. I don't know too many cases where humans have actually been hurt by rocks. Even if John Bull is on here, he was one of the first guys that told me that when he was out hiking there was a rock of substantial size that was pitched up the hill and landed between his legs. It
Oh,
came through like the yeah, right. So it came through the blackberries and it landed in a single thud. I believe I got that story right, John. So yeah, it's hard not to take it as a warning shot, right?
actually, interesting timing. Right before we hopped on trying to work out technical issues,
Right.
Brett received an email from someone with a video of a pretty decent, good sized rock that was lobbed at them.
Oh
We
wow.
need to do some more following up on that and learn more. But I mean, it's happening, and that you kind of jogged my memory when you were making Ron Moorhead's Biggie statue,
Hmm.
and the rabbit appeared after you talked about it. Had it been hit with a rock?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So there was no injuries that we could find except for a single rock that we plucked on video out of the left side of the skull. It was the only injury we could find. Now, a bird, a large raptor could grab a rabbit and drop it, and it would hit in the gravel and it may embed inside the skull. So that was a possibility. But the fact that I was asking for a rabbit, I mean, this gets into a whole different rabbit hole. But then we need to talk about there's a lot of gifts that are given to people in the form of rocks. In particular, rare rocks, really, like a lot of carnelian stones and quartz. Tara in our video shows a rock in the shape of a foot. A lot of times people actually, and I've seen some of these rocks before that are gifted to people, like a researcher named Brian Bland up in Canada. And some of these look like they have visages or faces, you know, on them when you turn them a certain way that look indicative of kind of a Sasquatch head, conical shaped head. Um, so it's a different conversation for a different crowd. These are our people talking this way here. I think that we're moving the needle, however, we're contributing to that. Um, I know we're moving the needle quite a bit here. The conversation has shifted greatly, and there are people paying attention right now to this live chat and all of these flash of beauty videos that eventually maybe we'll talk to one on one. But we know that they're watching and paying attention, and that the tide is turning.
Well, I apologize to them for my lack of decorum and being able to present in a professional manner.
Oh well,
I'm a fun person. What can I say?
yeah.
Um, so yeah, with the rock throwing again, I think it's just circumstances. I think when a large rock comes hurling at your head, it's safe to assume it's an act of aggression. If one is lobbed at you playfully at your back, like I experienced when Brett was flying drone for a Flash of Beauty Bigfoot revealed when we were in Bandon at the dump, and I was standing right next to Mike Ferry, our cinematographer, and someone or something kept throwing like little pebbles at my back, and obviously it wasn't them. And I turned around. There's a tree. We were standing maybe not 10 feet from the tree line,
Mhm.
and I was just like, okay, you guys, I get it. But just, nothing aggressive is more like what you would do in school,
I have
just
to mention what happened in Snell Grove too with Blaine Hycheck, Doug Hycheck's son, the infamous Snell Grove incident, which was captured on Monster Quest with Jeff Meldrum. It had the nail board footage where they did the kind of tracing of the nail board. The cutting room floor footage before they were even shooting, I believe, involved Blaine on the tree line catching rocks from the trees. They were being softly thrown out of the trees. Now, Snell Grove is an island that you have to pontoon plane and seaplane into, very remote. There's a chain of islands out in that area. Snell Grove is one of them. And it got to the point where Blaine was playing catch with the phenomena. He would throw the rock back, and the rock would go in there, I believe, without a thud, as though caught, and then softly tossed back to Blaine. So not a warning, definitely interaction with the phenomena. However, maybe it was an apport, who knows? but I tend to think just because of the hard, they got some pretty interesting evidence out of that
Yeah.
case, and then including rock throwing on top of the cabin. One of the skeptical scientists in that episode, I forget his name, was actually pretty unnerved by it. It was a pretty hair raising experience for him.
But it seems like that it's like, what are you searching for? What are you looking? Are you hoping to have an encounter at a safe distance, like where you can see something like 100 yards away and figure out the true height by tree and stuff? You know what I mean? Or is this not the interaction that you're looking for? You know what I mean?
It's all fun and games until the rocks start getting thrown.
Oh, it's true. It's true.
And one of
So
the best spots to have an experience is at a rock quarry. So maybe
I've heard
there's
that.
something about rocks in particular. There's certainly something about um, what Pearl Parada studies, a rock called rubidium. They don't seem to throw that rock as much as they seem to be milling it and using it. I have a really interesting report about um, the Native Americans talking actively about Sasquatch rubbing something on their hair for cloaking ability. It dates back to the early 1900s. It's the first written report that I found that kind of confirms that they're possibly using something that the Egyptians called Aramis or the Philosopher's Stone um, to rub on their skin and hair for, I guess, cloaking power, cloaking ability.
We will need to look into that further, but this is the right episode of our live
We're
stream
gonna
to
move into
look into that.
cloaking. I'm pitching you up something.
Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there, everyone. So hopefully that answered the questions about the rock throwing.
Mhm.
I think every occasion is going to be different, but it gives me pause for all the times I'll pick things up off a trail and just kind of haphazardly just toss them off into the woods because
Mhm.
you never know, you might hit someone or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty. Let's see here. So moving right along here. I'm just looking at our list. I already mentioned Doug's light he made. Hey Doug, do us all a favor and let us know how people can contact you if they're interested in something like this. I did not have your card or your information handy, so I was hoping that you would be here and you can let people know because I think everyone should have something cool and keep you busy.
Absolutely. I want one of those.
Let's see here. Can we talk really quick about some hints at disclosure?
Oh,
Can we talk about
yeah.
that?
So
You,
we both saw this video kind of pop up at once in our feed, right?
yeah, no, this isn't necessarily Bigfoot related, but I maybe it is. Maybe it's like it covers a lot of things. But I thought it was worth mentioning because
It's
maybe
not
some.
the first mention of this either, too. I know Lou Elizondo brought this up in some kind of little home Zoom interview he did with some podcaster interested in UFOs. And he mentioned a date as well. I don't know if it corresponds with what George Knapp and Dave Navarro have been talking about. There's an unlikely duo. If anybody who doesn't know who Dave Navarro is, you'd know him by his dyed Fu Manchu and his wicked bass line from such bands as Jane's Addiction and Red Hot Chili Peppers and dating Carmen Electra. He's a man about town and apparently interested in George Knapp's knowledge of UFOs and UAPs. And go ahead, Jill. What did they talk about?
Yeah, well, he didn't. He said it was classified. He can't tell us because it's classified. I'm like, well, should they be sharing it with you if it's classified? How does
Right.
that work? But
Yeah.
he did say that based on this information that was exchanged between him and George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, not to make plans March 3rd, 2026.
Okay.
March 3rd, 2026. And then he goes on to say, well, you won't have a choice.
Okay.
What is going
So
on March 3rd? Is it a James Addiction reunion gig? I
so
need to know.
the name of Lou Elizondo's book that comes out next month is called Imminent. Okay. There's a lot of opinions of what Lou Elizondo's actual interest in the phenomena is, whether or not he's just pulling a psyop right now from the Pentagon's level as far as disinformation. But regardless, he is giving out dates along with George Knapp, Dave Navarre. I don't know if any of this information came from Dave Grush. I think there's supposed to be another UFO UAP Transparency Congress meeting happening soon. There's some. Is it Representative Luna? That's kind of the hound dog chasing down what's going on with the UFO phenomena. There's a couple of interesting people. I think even um, Ocasio Cortez is lining up with Republicans and Democrats chasing down after this UAP issue. So there's a little cross pollination there. So we'll see what happens with this here. We've had some interesting military flight stuff happening over our area. We have and who knows what it is, but they're certainly interested in the phenomena. It could be related to that. Who knows?
Hmm. Well, everyone, mark your calendars. Maybe we can contact some of our remote viewer friends to look into that.
Yeah.
See what we get. Um, there is something I did want to read to everyone, and this all kind of unfolded today in the comment section of Barb Shupe's video. But it was from gosh, what's his name? What's his username? Bob Sanders on our YouTube channel. He had a sighting last night. He had his first sighting, and I just kind of wanted to share this because it just like coming in hot, and this happened in. He was in Sequoia National Forest. We were the last ones coming back from the Topeka. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. Topeka Falls Trail near Lodgepole Campground in the Sequoia National Forest. I noticed 75 yards off to our right, to the north, what looked like an animal carcass up on a boulder. This was unusual because on the hike up, I was scanning the area for marmots and hadn't noticed it. Then we found some straw that had been woven together in the middle of the trail that we had not seen before. I joked with my son, maybe Sasquatch left us a gift. And not even 5 minutes later, I got the creepiest, eeriest feeling and looked off again to our right and saw this thing on the boulder that looked hairy. We stood staring at it, and it seemed to be staring back at us, barely moving. I figured a black bear would have been shuffling about, but this thing to be slightly obscured by the boulder and very still, I wish I had a better camera. So he zoomed in on his iPhone and took a photo. Um, and it's interesting, and I don't have permission to share. We'll follow up with them, but yeah, he goes on. He talks about how they were next to a stream with trout, and he kept getting this feeling that was annoyed that they were kind of in the way. But I just, isn't that kind of funny? Like, you joke about it. How many people have we talked to? We hear from, they'll be like, oh, maybe we'll see a Bigfoot, or
Mhm.
oh, maybe something will happen, and then something happens. It's almost like asking you shall receive.
Yeah.
Thoughts? Sequoia National Forest.
I mean, it's a legend as far as having sightings. I mean, if you're going to see Bigfoot, that's a hell of a place to see it.
I think so. But yeah, he
Especially this
definitely.
time of year when it's beautiful outside and you could camp and see the moon, just like, oh my gosh, that's the spot.
Well, the bear, like the blackberries, the huckleberries, everything's
Mhm.
coming into season. Whatever fish run, apples are doing apple things. Apples are getting ripe and whatnot. But yeah, so he did get a photo and zoomed in, and it's like so many people say, I know what I saw, it wasn't a bear.
Right.
And he's kind of questioning, he's like, it wasn't there before. It does sort of have this like conical like head and stuff. So we'll follow up with him, and we'll see if there's any more additional. We should actually look in and see if there are any more sightings yesterday or today in Sequoia
Mhm.
National Forest. So I just
And
wanted to share that with everyone because it was kind of unfolding in the chat in Barb's comments, where I was like, email me, contact me. I
And
want to
Bob,
see
if
the
you can go
photos.
back to the area and kind of photograph the area just for your own provenance, you don't have to share it, but it helps lock in, a recreation of your mind a little bit and journal the step by step process of what happened that day.
Yeah, and maybe he's still there. Maybe we can have him go back. If you are
Hmm.
listening, go back to the scene of the sighting.
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
Sasquatch, CSI. Um, so Tobe, what have you been up to? What exciting things have you been doing that you can share with the
Oh,
group?
yeah. So, I followed up on that Bob Gimlin interview he did with Joe Rogan, where Joe pretty much admitted that he thought if the subject matter existed, it existed in a parallel dimension and basically flirted with this dimension periodically. That's where Rogan is with the phenomenon on personal level. Talked to this YouTuber named Bob Gimlin, who I never really watched. Interesting channel, very interesting videos. I think the guy should be given credit, for the fact that he's basically using the proper algorithm to attract attention. It's Gimlin with a Y after all, so not completely stealing anything. However, he's a fan of the subject matter, and he's definitely coming into this side of the phenomena. He shared a story which I had to send to Rich Germeau because it involves a police officer pulling over someone going over the speed limit, a possible DUI, in a very wooded area. And so Bob Gimlin does these really cool black and white recreation kind of cartoon drawings of the story as he reads it. Very moody, very 1940s, play radio kind of deal. And anyway, the cop pulls this guy over, and I don't want to give away the two story, but a Sasquatch intervenes in between the traffic stop. And between the guy that gets pulled over and the cop, there's this whole fascinating story about what has actually happened, and some stuff is realized later down the road about what actually happened. So if you have a chance, go check that out. I think it's just type in Bob Gimlin with a Y, police officer sighting Bigfoot, something to that effect would probably bring it up. But we just got back from a lot of Rich Germeau crossover right now. We were just in La Push, where Rich was a police officer for some time. Now I'd never, I'd been there one other time, but we hadn't really gone to the hotspot areas, and we hadn't stayed the night. And so this time we actually stayed for 4 nights in the woods right outside of Rich's hotspot on the Solduck River, which really, if you look at a map of Forks, Washington, home of Twilight, and if you go over to La Push, there's the Solduck River that this winds down like a snake until it hits Lake Crescent. And so we're right between the Solduck River and La Push, and we actually stayed out for at least uh, 2 or 3 nights in our hammocks. And so the girls would stay behind, and the boys would go about, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes up an old road. And the reason we ended up staying away from the ladies is we would actually, this group, when they go out, they all bring giant ceremonial drums, big drums, elk hide drums, small drums, and everyone just sits around and makes up campfire songs. But in this case, we actually got a response, and it was a pretty significant tree break at the tree line. Around 11:30 at night, to get a heavy tree break like that, it'd have to be something of substantial size to do this. Um, so we ended up staying the night in that area, and hanging in our hammocks, putting recorders out, leaving a basket full of apples and peanut butter. We had some possible rock clacking. After I'd gotten out of my hammock, I heard what sounded like somebody kind of squeezing. I don't know. It sounded very plasticky to me, but when I went back and reviewed it, it definitely sounds like something's in the distance hitting rocks together. And that's something that people claim that they hear. And a very strange whistle sound we couldn't identify, possibly an owl. But yeah, overall, um, it was a good location, a place we'll be heading back to. And so it was a lot of fun. And we ended up actually going to look for the oh, what is the blue glow on the Pacific Ocean when the water glows blue like Avatar? You know what
Oh,
I'm
the bioluminescent,
The
the algae.
bioluminescence, yeah. So we went looking for that. We stayed up till about 10:30 at night waiting for that to happen. Wasn't happening, but beautiful beach. And if you ever get a chance to go out towards Rialto Beach or La Push Beach, just absolutely stunning, both of those places.
Very cool. And you had good weather?
Yeah, it started off really good, and then it kind of tapered off into manageable. But Forks is the rainiest, and we were really close to Forks. Forks, I think, is the rainiest part of Washington State. Like it's a rainforest. Like when
Yeah.
you watch the Twilight movies and it's moody and the vampires are coming out filled with glitter, that's why they picked it. It's because Forks is very moody.
Very good.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just kind of, as you're talking, monitoring the chat and
Yeah.
have an update. Bob Sanders is going to go back and take more photos.
Nice.
So we'll be able to compare and contrast what he saw. And
Mhm.
Bob, depending on how adventurous you're feeling, maybe go to the boulder.
Yeah, maybe there's
That's
something
not too
left for
much.
you there, Bob. Like, chances are that they knew you were there and that you had an experience, and that maybe if you're even coming back, they may still be in the vicinity, kind of passively interacting. But if you feel brave enough, yeah, definitely go check out some of the area where it was heading in from or going to. That's what I'd do.
and, and Tobe would do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, I'm
you guys,
still here.
I'm gonna admit, I'm gonna, you know what, I gotta turn off my little chat thing here
Okay.
because I need to give you my full attention so we can
Oh,
really get
geez.
into the meat
Yeah.
of this.
Okay.
Um, so let's talk about the video that we posted this morning.
Mm,
Barb Shupe.
mm.
And there's a few things I think before we really get into it. One of the other things that came up in the comments um, right out of the gate, people asking who are kind of new to all this, asking what it means when people are zapped or sizzled, or when they're running into that energy and whatnot. Now, would this be just different interpretations of infrasound? You think?
These are things that Barb brings up in the video, correct?
Yes.
And she brings it up kind of like, well, you guys should know the jargon. You're all Bigfooters watching me talk about it. I'm the same way, Barb. Like, I just start halfway through the conversation to the crowd that's possibly new to the table here. But in the case of what Barb's trying to explain, exactly right. Like, we don't know what to call this because it doesn't seem measurable. Like maybe we've measured it on EMF. Maybe we've got a discharge that way through things like wood knock and whatnot. But I don't know if anybody's recorded a low frequency sound from possible infrasound of Sasquatch. I think it's probably more mysterious than that. But yeah, Zapped is probably, I would say Zapped is like right up there. Like you said, it's not the Scott Baio movie. It's, the act of being kind of invisibly scanned or maybe even
Stopped.
stunned,
Yeah,
stopped,
stunned, I think, is a
turned
good word
around.
for it.
Um, it's also where, at the same time, there could be a telepathic message sent as well.
Very good. So just we want to throw that out there in case anyone was wondering.
Mhm.
And also, there were a lot of comments, um, and this happens, but a lot of people were really upset that Barb's video that we're discussing, the cloaker, wasn't included in the interview. And
Mm.
just, kind of a housekeeping thing here, what we're doing, we're just putting up the full interviews. We just want everyone to have context of all the stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor. I mean, to be honest, each one of these interviews could be a documentary in and of its own right, but it just, you know, we just had to put it out there. We kind of were hoping and thought, maybe people had already watched the documentary A Flash of Beauty Paranormal Bigfoot, where we do a whole segment around the cloaker footage. So I was
Hmm.
trying to, in the beginning, I was pretty upbeat, redirecting people and like, oh, you can see it in our documentary, but I was getting a little snippy towards the end of the day.
She's
So I
overwhelmed trying to
apologize.
redirect.
Yeah, so it happens, and that's a note on us. We gotta, if we're
Mm.
gonna be talking about significant things like that right out of the gate, we need to let people know where they can see it. Um, and people are
Yeah,
also saying, they're like, it's not hard to find her stuff online. You just
no.
type it in and it's
I
there.
mean, short of like maybe putting a little scroll or a chyron that pops up to see actual footage go to, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, yeah.
obviously, she's in the documentary, and the video is shown in there. But a lot, maybe people. Here's the deal: is that the YouTube channel is doing well enough to where people are just like, well, this is good enough. Like maybe there's a fair amount of people that are just like, haven't seen the movie. I'm just a fan of the YouTube channel. Is that possible?
I don't know. I
Hmm.
don't know. I gotta work on sharing the movie some more. I don't think many people are seeing it. But that being said, and also if we were to do that with Barb's video and put in all her cloaker stuff and even the secondary footage of when we're out on location and stuff, then we'd need to do it for all of them, and I'm just not sure we're able to take that on right now, especially with all the other projects going on. But let's set that aside. we
Okay.
will we will have a staff meeting about that.
Yeah. Well, there,
But
the interesting thing about Barb's video is the fact that there's other videos out there that seem to show the same thing. Not, um, I don't know if they're as good a quality as what Barb caught because, first of all, Barb caught hers with a low end iPhone touch, right? Like it wasn't even like an iPhone. It was like first generation. I had one of those, I think, in the beginning as well. So
yeah,
it wasn't surfing maybe it was surfing the internet, not getting a call. But had she had a GoPro or DJI or something like that, like who knows where this footage would be right now. There's been some other interesting things along the way that seem to match, and this goes back to maybe social engineering and the idea that the Predator movie actually came out before this phenomena was talked about because it is what people are describing. It is the pixelation silhouette of a figure, not
hmm,
always a humanoid figure. Anyway, I've seen some really interesting ones of what look like to be boxes or tubes in the woods that are kind of like pool noodle or something like that, or like one of those things out front of a used car lot. And you see this weird pixelation thing starting to happen, and maybe it's gathering steam to bring itself, forth into its physical form. But Barb is she's gone on to have some really she brought people out to areas. Barb has, she's one of the originators of doing campouts outside of the BFRO of a devoted, hardcore fan base that have had consistent experiences in some really well-known hotspots, including the Blue Mountains, including the Cascade Wilderness, including out here in the Olympics. And yeah, they brought back incredible evidence along the way, not just this. So where she lives is totally squatchy, and I believe she said that was like her first or second outing with a group. Like they were kind of all newly formed. So that's what really, she didn't have to waste a bunch of time looking at this from a flesh and blood angle at that point, because it kind of pushed her over the edge immediately.
Yeah. I mean, she took us where it happened.
Hmm.
And and she was even she talks about having activity around her home. Now, granted, her home is in a she has a cabin that is in the woods. Like, I can't think of a more perfect location to have encounters. I mean, she's near Mount Rainier. It is lush, it is green,
Right on the
and
river.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that did not shock me at all. She really didn't need to go far from home.
Mhm.
I'd be curious, and I don't know if Barb's in the chat, uh, about the continued activity around her location. Like, does it come in waves? Is it seasonal? Does it How does it compare to like when she's doing her outings, the camp outs, away from home? Does that trigger it activity back at the homestead?
I think so. I think it follows her home after she does these campouts. I mean, she has quite a bit of activity that she doesn't get to, but she goes on these walks with her dog Goldie. And so she sets her GoPro up on her walking stick again and does her little walks behind her house, which is pretty remote. We all saw it. And she has some interesting light phenomena. Now, she calls these fairies because they're small little dashes of light that come into view extremely fast. I think I don't remember the calculation of the last one I saw, but it didn't appear for me. If that's what the calculation was, it couldn't have been a bug if the calculations were accurate. So, I've heard some interesting stories along the way, people that have seen fairies. One of them was a very level headed guy. We'll just call him Dave, military background. He swears that when he was in his kitchen window one morning, he was getting a cup of coffee and he looked in his backyard and he sees a glowing green thing zip by the window. And as it zips by the window, he just sees the flash. And then he looks up, and backing up is a little green fairy, and it looks at him through the window and it gives him one of these, like, hey, and then it takes off. Now, when he told me this incredible story, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do, to to survive this moment with a guy without making him look like I think he's crazy. But I know him, and it's just like everything's possible, right? Like I think it's all on the table. Like if this guy's seeing green fairies give him head nods, Barb's videotaping them in the woods behind her Bigfoot location. We don't have any idea what these lights are. We have a solid plan with Simeon Hine looking into relic neutrinos, but I don't know. I'm ready for it all. Like we're next week, we should be ready for it all. We've got big plans next week, and I'm totally just like, okay, Bigfoot's part of the equation, but I know it's so much bigger. And I just like, okay, I want to get ready for it all.
Now, do you think Barb is kind of like in the way that Daryl Adams is like a lightning bolt for this kind of stuff? Do you think Barb has that pull the same way that the activity kind of, I don't want to say it performs for her, but it makes itself available for her to witness?
Don't you? I mean, what do we do? I mean, but she lives underneath Mount frickin' Rainier. And so is everybody a Barb? But I don't know. Like she has stuff happen in her house that is so familiar, and that's the connection to them dealing with somebody in that way, and Barb allowing it. Yeah, I think she does get a little bit spooked out because she's alone in the cabin when this happens, usually with only her dog. And it's everything you can imagine in your head right now, as far as like it being a little mountain cabin on the river tucked away in the woods. It is that, like she's all alone. um And yeah, so I think she has invited the phenomena into her life, and I think it's happy to entertain that invite as often as it can, or she's allowing it. And I think that's what Daryl was as well. Like there was only one time where we told him to back off, but for the most part, if you allow this phenomena to interact with you and you live in a place like Mount Rainier, I mean, come on.
Now I'm trying to think. No, Barb also talked about the first initial sighting where there was like a herd of elk. Like one was kind of like stalking and hunting elk, and that's like she drew a sketch of it. Do you?
Now say that again. I got
Um,
distracted with the chat.
I
Say it
know, right?
again.
Right? I know.
Say it
I have
again.
no idea what's being said. When well, Barb talked about her sighting when there were elk coming, and she drew
Oh
what
yeah.
she saw, you know. Now, and I wonder, like, do you think because it's in the same area that would be connected to what she caught with the cloaker, like part of that family or something? And maybe I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that it's kind of like, oh, you got us, so maybe that's why they're comfortable interacting with her so much.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it
don't
must.
know.
It has to be. It has to be discussed. Maybe let's say you're comfortable speaking at this only from a primate level, and you're in with a good um, clan or pod of Sasquatch, and you're dealing with them like Diane Fossey or Jane Goodall, and this is your connection to understanding this here. Well, here you have a woman. The women seem, well, at least two of them seem to get closer to primates than the men do for whatever reason. So you have that connection. And Barb is very blue collar, and I think that's probably key to getting in with them because these things are not uptight. They're just not. They're looking for people that aren't uptight around them, and Barb is just kind of like one of the guys when you're at the campfire, right? She's just one of the cool
She's
ones.
so easygoing. She's like
Easy
probably the
going.
most easygoing person I've ever met. So just very
Yeah.
mellow and
Same with Arla, right? And Daryl's the same way. Like they're not out trying to hound and hunt and look. They're just like, hey, we're here. We're cracking a Keystone Light. If you guys want to come hang, we're going to be doing our thing here with the drums. We're doing s'mores. And then we may go for a walk later and we're going to bring cameras and recorders, but you don't have to be around when we do it. We'd love it if you were. And that's really the attitude, you know? So that's she didn't allow a lot of uptight people to come back to her group. They may come once, but they're not going to enjoy themselves because it's not an environment like a researcher environment. You know, maybe the best way to research is to not research, and I
well,
think
isn't that
that's
what
why.
everyone says when they have their
Yeah.
sightings or experiences? They were doing something completely not like they weren't looking for Bigfoot.
Hmm.
Something, it just all kind of unfolded. So
Okay.
yeah. Is there anything in the chat I should be paying attention to? I feel left out.
I was just waiting to see if Barb was joining in here. I didn't see that.
Okay.
But Arla's here. We got some new faces in here, including MJ, who used to live here in Washington and moved up to Alaska, the heart of
Ooh.
Bigfoot country up in Alaska there. So we did talk a little bit about Bigfoot Uptick before we came online here and how there's been kind of a resurgence of sightings, possibly an uptick in sightings happening in general. And I don't have any confirmation as far as who's saying that right now, but it keeps on coming uh, past the internet here. Have you heard anything specific as far as why that would be and who's saying that?
Not specific. I do know. I mean, Scott Tompkins, Bigfoot Mapping Project.
Mhm.
Hit product placement there. Um, he continues to share his maps and whatnot, and but a few people have been commenting in the post that there just seems to be an uptick. Like more people are talking about sightings, more people are having experiences. But I also think that, well, if you're on a YouTube channel, you're gonna be fine. This is where people are gonna come to talk about these things.
Right.
It's not gonna be in your general news chat or whatnot. So I would like to think, what I would like to think is going on is that more people are getting comfortable talking about it. More people are getting comfortable sharing their
Mhm.
stories and encounters and seeking out other like-minded people, and that might be the uptick. I know there's been a few people posting like everyone's having an experience but me. Everyone seems to see these things all the time. No, I just think you found a community where more people are talking about it a lot more
Mhm.
freely.
I mean,
That's what I.
even my brief sighting, um, after almost 20 years, very brief, um, I can't even be 100%. I can be 95% about it. It wasn't a Bob Gimlin type situation, but you know, I put in the hours and still I've come up short. I haven't seen what so many people have described as something that has changed their life forever yet. Still, I'm here, and it must be for other real issues like the strangeness surrounding Bigfoot that brings me back. So, yeah, it just if there's an uptick in sightings, maybe it's because of this whole UFO phenomena too. Maybe there's some crossover to this arrival date stuff happening. This goes into Henry's Lane, probably more. Um, but I would put some credit behind uh, something like that occurring as well. Like things are coming up out of the ground, getting ready. Softening territory perhaps to that degree. But I do see a lot more Bigfoot interview confessional videos. I don't know if you've noticed that at all since in the last year, especially. There's a lot more YouTube channels dedicated to eyewitness interviews. And I think that's normalizing stuff. I think, again, the Joe Rogan thing, he brings up Bigfoot all the time. And now he's like, interviewing people, Bigfoot enthusiasts and witnesses. So it's, it doesn't go on deaf ears. That's a huge audience that he's pushing in a direction.
Well, my question is, with the uptick, with more people talking about it, with the conversation becoming more normal, is that putting pressure on the skeptics, or is that just I mean, is that more push? Is that just going to create more pushback, or is it one of these things like you read comments on our page about I was a skeptic, I thought all this was nonsense, dot dot dot, until it happened to me, and then they go into their to what they experienced. I mean, do you foresee there could be like a giant like a tidal wave of like the sightings become so common, it's like
You mean a
the skeptics
Sasquatch
have nowhere to
revival?
run? What's that?
A Sasquatch revival.
In a tent,
I like it.
yes.
The
Yes.
big tent. Um, I think the voices will it'll be normalized enough now, just like the UFO thing. You don't hear the Twilight Zone music anymore when UFOs are being brought up, or the X Files music rather. Uh, and I think the voices are getting quieter and quieter because the people are talking louder and louder. So it it will it stands to reason that this would be the same thing. I don't know, man. It's I have a hard time thinking Bigfoot's not even weirder than the UFO thing. I think it might be even weirder than the UFO thing, even if it is connected. The fact that they're just right there. You know what I mean? Like we picture we picture UFOs coming from somewhere else, and that's probably not even true. They're probably coming through the same, window areas, perhaps. But there is this feeling that Sasquatch is just right there in the woods with us, and we've been missing it the whole time. That's just endlessly fascinating to me, especially for the hunters that are out in the woods putting in the miles every year, bow hunting especially, and not having a sighting. I could get why they think that we're kind of crazy because they should be. having experiences, and they do. I mean, we've talked to them, Mark Parker, but there's so many people that have not had incredible sightings that should have, including a lot of Bigfooters. Like there's I mean, there's really well-known Bigfooters in this community that A, haven't had a sighting, B, don't go out in the woods at night, especially by themselves, because they don't want to have a sighting. So I mean, it's interesting. It's very interesting.
On that note, I wanna read something that someone posted today, this morning actually, and it was if geez, I think it was on A Flash of Beauty Paranormal Bigfoot. The timestamp that they threw this in was the is 23 minutes and 35 seconds, and I kind of think that that's on the sequel, because that's when Ira Wolfnussen is presenting, and she's talking about, what it means when people have an encounter. It's meant to open you up. It's the
Mm,
invitation that not everyone RSVPs to.
yeah.
And BC4198, their YouTube handle, they said, "This is so perfect. It's like the quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Mm,
You can live as a skeptic until then, but when you see a UFO cross the sky, get touched by a ghost or other mysterious thing, you're faced with, well, now what? If you refuse to believe that what you just saw, the evidence right in front of you, is creating a new woo-woo religion for yourself, even if it's sort of inside out from the others. But seeing something and agreeing you saw it, that's the opposite of woo woo. People just need to be careful about what you conclude or extrapolate from there." But
mm.
you know, that that just really hit the nail on the head. Everyone thinks they have it figured out until it happens to them. You know, how many times have we heard
Mhm.
that? But I love that quote. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah, that sounds like a line out of Patrick Swayze's mouth in Roadhouse. That definitely puts it into perspective. I love it.
So I and I also BC4198. I encourage you to find more like similar quotes and sayings to
Yeah,
capture moments in our videos. That would be fantastic.
right. Yeah.
But but yeah, that's going to be my new response when someone
Right.
who's been a staunch disbeliever or
Hmm.
skeptic is like, "No, it happened to me," and I'm going to be like, "Well, you got punched in the face. Now what?"
Right. Well, people have different versions of the truth, right? And they may not tell you their version of what really happened, but they'll tell somebody else. So, all you can do is kind of just hang tight and, know what you know and don't cause any problems. This is tough to talk about for a lot of people. It's not tough for us to talk about because we don't have a lot to lose, right? Like you're making a documentary about Sasquatch. You don't have a lot to lose if you're doing a podcast of, but if you're a pillar of the community, it's I could understand why this would be a difficult thing to come around. So I don't know. We need to have Dr. Michael Adams back on.
We do, and maybe as we make arrangements for the next round of the podcast where we do the follow-ups, we
Hmm.
should start out with him and just say, "Let's go. Let's go down the rabbit hole."
Yeah, yeah. I did want to mention really quick about Sasquatch waxy sebum or alba vernix as it pertains to possibly being related to something that the DoD has been looking into. There's a whole host of VA benefit requests that have been approved for injury pertaining to the UAP phenomena. So let's say I'm a vet, I have a VA injury, I have a certain amount of disability from said injury, and I prove that this happened due to exposure to not only the UAP phenomena, but from anomalous phenomena as well. They do their investigation and go before a board, and then you get a percentage monthly, um, to basically say, sorry, we exposed you to that. So this is happening in the UFO community. I wonder if the day will ever come, per se, to Kyle over at the military base here in Washington, Fort Lewis, whether or not there'll be any benefits from exposure or proximity to something like infrasound or maybe the byproduct of alba vernix, which we still have no idea really what this sebum is that they leave behind these latent handprints. The only thing that worries me about this is the fact that it mutates and it degrades what it touches. So if you're in proximity to something that has that quality to it and can lay out an EMF charge due to a wood knock, um, there may be some health consequences to things like infrasound and touching not blaming them, not blaming the Sasquatch for this. They can't help it. But if you're standing in the middle of traffic, traffic can't help it either. You just need to know what's going on. So just something to think about. Maybe people can dig around and see if there's ever been a claim filed for injury or proximity to a cryptid, and had that.
Well, wouldn't a good place to start be the national parks with all the missing people? What? I
What?
mean, I don't know, but just give it after all this UFO disclosure, and then once the Sasquatch disclosure rolls out, what you're talking about right now, where there could be health consequences, we're going
Mhm.
to start seeing those late night ads on TV. Like, if you encountered a Sasquatch, you might be entitled to compensation
Right. Yeah.
with an
Yeah.
800 number. So,
Yeah. I love it. Well, that's what I've got right now. We may be on the road together doing a live next week. Is that a possibility?
yeah. Oh,
Maybe
yes.
like literally on the road, like doing it from a phone at a
Yeah.
at a Bucky's or something. I don't know where we'll be, but it could happen.
We will not disappoint. We will make something happen.
Okay.
That's all I got. Is there anything else in the chat? Any seeing that I turned it off because I will just zone out and read everything
I know. I've been kind of guilty of
like you've been doing this entire evening. Yes.
that.
If that
No, there's been a lot of interaction here. This is a very interactive crowd that follows us. That's always a compliment to what we're trying to do is get people to network together, to get information out there. I will say before we leave is that we have two more meetings coming up this month, our last two meetings this month for your orientation of Olympic Strange Days. I've still got about 6 or 7 people that I need to talk to about orientation as far as expectations or questions that you have, including hoodie size of what you'll be wearing. But all systems go, and we're coming up. By the time we get back, it'll be less than a month from our go time for the first Olympic Strange Day. So be prepared for that. And if you have any questions, just go to olympicstrangedays.com and shoot me an email.
sounds good. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in and stay tuned for next week. It's gonna be real interesting.
All right. Talk to you
Okay.
later.